In a land where wealth and status determine one's worth, there lived a young woman named Elara. She lived in a small humble cottage nestled at the edge of the village where life was slow and simple. The other villagers saw her as no different than any other poor girl, someone who was always there to lend a hand when needed but remained mostly in the background unnoticed and unimportant. Little did they know Elara carried a secret so great that if revealed, it would change the lives of everyone around her. Elara was not the daughter of Marina and the elderly man who had raised her. No, she was the heir to something far more valuable than anyone could ever imagine. But because of her circumstances, she had no reason to believe in her own worth. Raised as a humble weaver, Elara grew accustomed to the quiet life of the village. The fabric she wove, though intricate and beautiful, was never a sign of her true potential. It was merely a means to survive just as it was for the many others around her. One bright morning as she worked diligently in her small cottage, the rhythmic sound of her loom echoing through the room, there was a knock on the door. Elara looked up from her work startled before making her way to the door. It was Marina, her adoptive mother, who was standing there, her face slightly flushed with exertion. "Elara, my dear," Marina said, her voice warm but with an undercurrent of urgency. "It's time to gather firewood for the evening. The feast is tonight and there will be guests of great importance. The whole village is preparing and I need you to help where you can. But make sure to stay out of the way when the lords and ladies arrive, all right?" Elara nodded quietly, looking down at her hands. "Yes, Mama. I'll finish up here and come right out." Marina smiled and patted Elara's arm affectionately before turning to leave, but there was something in her eyes. Something that Elara couldn't quite read. As Marina left, Elara stood still for a moment, the silence of the room pressing in on her. She had always lived with the weight of her identity, a girl with no past, no future, no sense of belonging to anything or anyone. She had grown up in this village but deep down, there was always the faint sense that she didn't belong. The life she led was one of humility. Each day was a blur of work, spinning, weaving, cooking, cleaning, and she never complained. It was the way things had always been and it was how she had always imagined it would be. But today was different. She didn't know why, but there was something stirring deep inside her, something she had long buried under the daily grind of life. She finished her work and headed outside where the fresh scent of the forest and the sound of the birds filled the air. Elara had always found peace among the trees. They seemed to understand her, silent, steadfast and enduring. As she made her way toward the woods to gather firewood, she caught sight of a group of teenagers led by Aldrich, a young man known for his arrogance. "Look, it's the poor girl again trying to pretend like she's part of our world," Aldrich said loudly enough for her to hear. His voice carried a sharp edge and his friends laughed in response. "She thinks she's better than us because she can weave fabric." "What a joke," one of the villagers added, his tone mocking. Elara's heart sank. She had grown used to the teasing over the years but it still hurt every time. She lowered her gaze trying to pretend she hadn't heard. But Aldrich, seeing her reluctance to engage, decided to push her further. "What's the matter, Elara? Too good for us now? Don't forget your place. You're just a poor servant girl." "You'll always be that," Aldrich taunted, stepping in her path to block her way. Elara felt a rush of heat flood her cheeks. She could feel the eyes of the others on her, waiting for her to break. But she refused to. Her fingers tightened around the bundle of firewood she was carrying and she forced a calm expression though her heart raced in her chest. I'm just going to help at the feast," Elara said, her voice steady but quiet, trying to move past him. Aldrich scoffed. "Oh, how noble of you. You really think the rich folk will notice you? They won't even care about your humble weaving. You'll always be nothing but a shadow, a nobody." The group of teenagers burst into laughter but Elara didn't flinch. She kept her head held high, pushing past them without another word. It was all she could do to avoid letting their cruel words take root in her heart. As she walked through the village, her mind kept drifting back to what Aldrich had said. Could he be right? Was that all she would ever be, a poor servant girl with no future? The thought gnawed at her, but she pushed it away, focusing instead on the task at hand. The evening came quickly and the village square was transformed for the grand feast. Lanterns lit the streets, casting a golden glow over the stalls and market tables. The sounds of laughter and conversation filled the air as the villagers prepared for the arrival of the noble guests. Ilara, wearing a simple dress, did what she could to help, carrying food to the tables, assisting with the setup. She could hear the whispers around her, the villagers talking about the important guests who would be arriving soon. Most of them were excited, but some couldn't hide their disdain for the rich folk who would descend upon the village, treating them as nothing more than a spectacle. And then, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a grand carriage pulled into the village square. The crowd paused, hushed by the presence of the lord and lady who emerged. Lord Dorian, tall and handsome, with dark sharp eyes that seemed to pierce through the crowd, stepped out of the carriage. His elegant clothing marked him as someone of great status, and the whispers of the villagers grew louder. "Who is that? He must be important," one woman murmured. "Is he royalty?" another whispered. Lord Dorian scanned the crowd with a knowing expression, his gaze sweeping over the villagers. It was then that his eyes landed on Ilara, who was standing at the edge of the crowd holding a basket of bread. There was a flicker of recognition in his eyes, though Ilara didn't understand why. He made his way toward her, his presence commanding attention, and Ilara couldn't help but feel a strange pull toward him. Her heart beat faster, though she had no idea why. "You," he said, his voice low, almost to himself. "It's you." Ilara blinked, taken aback by his words. "I don't know what you mean, sir. I'm just a humble servant girl." Lord Dorian's gaze softened, a mix of surprise and recognition in his eyes. "No, my lady. You are so much more than that," he replied, his tone gentle but firm. Ilara felt a chill run down her spine, a strange sense of unease and curiosity swirling within her. She had never met this man before, yet the way he looked at her made it feel as though he had known her all her life. She took a hesitant step back. "I don't understand," Ilara whispered. "I'm just Ilara, the girl who helps around the village. I don't belong to your world. I don't even know who you are." Lord Dorian smiled softly, his eyes flickering with something like pity, though not in a cruel way. "You are not just any girl, Ilara. You are the daughter of a noble house, an heir to a title that has been lost for many years. Your parents were once of great importance to this land, and it is time you knew the truth." Ilara's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't process the words. The heir to a noble house? The daughter of royalty? It sounded impossible, like something out of a fairy tale. But his serious expression told her that he wasn't lying. She felt a wave of dizziness wash over her as the world around her seemed to tilt. "No," she whispered, shaking her head in disbelief. "That can't be true. I was raised by Marina, and my real parents died when I was just a child. I was nothing but an orphan." Lord Dorian reached into his coat and pulled out a small ornate locket. He held it out to her, his fingers steady but his eyes filled with a quiet determination. "This locket once belonged to your mother. She was one of the last to wear it before tragedy struck. It's been passed down through generations in your family, and it is the key to your true legacy." Ilara's breath caught in her throat as she gazed at the locket. The intricate design on it seemed familiar in a way that she couldn't explain. Without thinking, she reached out and took it from his hand. As her fingers brushed against the cool metal, a surge of emotion swept over her: confusion, fear, curiosity, and something else, something that felt like belonging. "Why didn't Marina tell me?" Ilara asked, her voice trembling. "Why would she hide this from me?" Lord Dorian gave a sad, knowing look. "Your adoptive mother did what she thought was best. She feared that should you learn of your true heritage too soon, you would be burdened with a responsibility far too heavy for one so young. But the time has come for you to claim your birthright, Elara. The land, the fortune, the legacy, it all belongs to you now. Elara sat in the carriage as it rolled away from the village, the only home she had ever known, fading into the distance behind her. The trees lining the road whispered secrets she could not yet understand, their leaves rustling in a language older than time itself. Beside her, Lord Dorian remained silent, his gaze fixed ahead as if seeing a future only he could perceive. Elara clutched the locket in her hand, its weight grounding her amidst the whirlwind of change. The journey stretched on through forests and fields, over hills and rivers, each mile carrying her further from the life she had known and closer to the destiny she had never imagined. They arrived at a grand estate nestled in a valley surrounded by mountains that reached for the sky. The manor stood tall, its stone walls weathered by time yet strong, a testament to the legacy Elara was to inherit. Inside, the halls echoed with the footsteps of those who had come before. Portraits of ancestors lined the walls, their eyes seeming to follow her as she passed. Elara felt their silent judgment, their expectations pressing upon her shoulders. Lord Dorian led her to a chamber where a woman awaited her, regal and poised, with eyes that mirrored Elara's own. "Welcome home, my lady," the woman said, her voice warm yet firm. "I am Lady Seraphina, your aunt and guardian of your family's legacy." Elara's heart pounded as she stepped forward, questions swirling in her mind but words failing her. Lady Seraphina approached, placing a gentle hand on Elara's cheek. "You have your mother's eyes and your father's strength. They would be proud of the woman you are becoming." Tears welled in Elara's eyes as the reality of her heritage settled upon her. She was no longer the humble weaver from the village, she was the heir to a noble house with a responsibility to her people and her land. Days turned into weeks as Elara learned the ways of her ancestors, studying history, governance and diplomacy under Lady Seraphina's guidance. She trained in swordsmanship and strategy, her body and mind growing stronger with each passing day. Yet doubts lingered in her heart. Memories of the village and the simple life she had left behind haunted her dreams. She missed Marina's comforting presence, the familiar rhythm of the loom and the quiet solace of the forest. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Elara stood on a balcony overlooking the estate, her thoughts heavy. Lord Dorian joined her, his presence a steadying force. "You carry a great burden, Elara," he said softly, "but you also possess a great strength." Elara turned to him, her eyes searching his. "I fear I am not ready, that I will fail those who depend on me." He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Leadership is not about never failing but about rising each time you fall and learning from your mistakes." Elara nodded, determination flickering in her eyes. "Then I will rise and I will learn for the sake of my people and the legacy I now bear." As the stars emerged one by one illuminating the night sky, Elara felt a sense of purpose settle within her. She was no longer just a girl from a village. She was a leader, a beacon of hope for those who had none. And so her journey continued, filled with challenges and triumphs, sorrow and joy, as she embraced her destiny and forged a new path, guided by the strength of her ancestors and the unwavering belief in herself.